Okay. So yeah, thank you, John, for joining us to talk about your wonderful and prestigious career. The first thing I wanted to ask you was what made you want to go into the film business to begin with? What inspired you?
Well, I did national service because I'm sufficiently old, and I didn't want to go into what my parents did or what my uncles or this. I didn't want to go into a job that was, had a pension and things. I wanted something that was a bit more exciting.
Mhm.
And in 1959, you could there were masses of jobs around. There was you could choose anything you liked. And I had an interest in cameras and films, and although I'd made sort of soppy little things myself, nothing was professional about it. So I had an uncle who was a film editor, and I wrote to him because I lived in Norwich then. I was born in London, but I lived in Norwich because my father was transferred out there. He was a civil servant.
Mhm.
And I wrote to this uncle, and he said, well, if you want a job that has no security but a lot of fun, come and join us. And you couldn't get in because of the unions. So I had to start as a probationary member, was a numbering boy. And I started MGM,
Mhm.
and I had the most fantastic training there all the way through. And then from, being a numbering boy to becoming a second assistant and then a first assistant, then assembly editor, and then an editor. But it took a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, today people go to film school and do a film course on editing, and they come out and they think they're an editor.
Mm.
Well, they might be if they're very lucky, but to go on to feature films and that, you've got to have a lot more experience, a lot more backup behind you. And that I did have. I did some fantastic jobs.
Mm.
As you, am I not seeing any of your students?
Oh no, just be yeah, you and I on screen there, just in the background.
I see. I imagine we would be on a Zoom meeting, so you'd see all these people asking questions. Doesn't matter.
Oh no, I mean they can ask questions via the chat, but it's just when you put it on YouTube, it's a bit easier just to focus on a couple of people rather than
Okay.
a
Right.
crowd. Um, so would you say that it was easier to get into the industry then, and it was a
No,
better?
it wasn't easy. It was done. It was nepotism basically.
Hmm.
Well, nepotism helped because
Yeah.
by having a relative in or a close friend, you could then know what the hours were involved, because it's not a 9 to 5 job.
Hmm.
Definitely isn't. And it was
Yeah.
8 till 8 early on,
Hmm.
and 6 days a week
Hmm.
at MGM. And for £6, 10 shillings a week I was 21.
Hmm. Uh, and when you say you were a number boy, was that just put the numbers on the slates on the
Oh
clapperboards?
no, that's the camera side. No, this is the cutting room side. No, let's say, because we had separate picture and track.
Hmm.
Picture came in, was processed at a laboratory. I mean, on the floor, you had a camera and a sound recordist, and the sound recordist would put it onto, in my early days, it was in 35mm film, and the camera had 35mm film in it, and it would run for 10 minutes. That's the maximum you get out of a roll.
Yeah.
So this would the picture would go to the laboratories, Technicolor or Rank or wherever they were, and be processed. And I would get the film back the next morning, and then the sound would be transferred from the 35 onto another 35 track. We didn't cut the original, naturally. And then they would all have to be synchronized on by the clapperboard at the front or the end, depending. It didn't have automatic syncing like you have on cameras today. And then it had to go, it was done by the second assistant on the picture, all synchronized. Then they ran it in the theater to check it was correct. And then it would come to me as the numbering boy, and I would put it on a Moy machine. I haven't got a picture of it now, but it was a machine where you lace it up, and where the start mark was, where the clapper hit, you'd put a wax pencil, the second assistant put a wax pencil on it, and you put that in the machine, set the numbering block, which at say if it was slate 25, take 6, it would be slate 025 000, and that would be done on the picture and the sound, and then it would run until the end of that slate, and then you pick up the next one, 027 or whatever it happened to be. So that was the only way you keep the picture and track in sync later on in life when you start cutting the film. So that's what a numbering board did. It was very monotonous and dirty work, because it involved inks and little wicks on it. It was very crude, but it worked. I mean, in France, they used to do it by hand. This, when I started, at least they had a machine. And then it goes, and then it goes back into the cutting rooms, and then it has to be, and when it's all cut, it then has to be joined. So if you're a second assistant, your job would be to join the film up, which was on a machine which had a heated blade on it, and you had to scrape a piece of the emulsion off, fold it over, cut it. I mean, I could probably still do it today, but there are lots of pictures of how it was done, which is available. But I mean, in those days at MGM, you had to wear a suit to go to work and a tie. And when you were doing the splicing, the machine was done with acetate, all frightfully dangerous now, acetate. And if the acetate splashed onto your tie, it burnt a hole in it. So, that was it, anyhow. It's a very crude way of talking.
What's your earliest memory of being on a film or TV project that you thought, oh, what's the first project that lingers in your memory as being, oh, this is a nice project to be on?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think of the first picture I worked on. I've got it written down here somewhere. I think it was called, oh, I should have got my script out, because that has it on. But it was in black and white. It was Secret Partner, I think it was. Secret Partner, was it? It was Stuart Granger and Haya Harreet. And I was the second assistant. Ray Porton was the editor. Ernie Grimsdale, was it? Or Ernie Grimsdale, I think, was the first, and I was the second. No credits in those days, and it lasted about 6 months. But we had a sound editor on that picture, who was Norman somebody. Anyhow, he took a shine to me, and when later on when I was more of a first assistant, he took me on Zhivago. Oh, wow. Because he was the editor on Zhivago. So I started on big pictures then. But I did lots of small pictures in between, and I did a television series in black and white called 01. And but then I became, I think I was a first assistant, or at least I wasn't a second assistant on that. I was upgraded. I mean, this is all takes. The pictures then were taking 6 months to make. That's why my CV doesn't have very many pictures on it now, because they were pictures that lasted 18 months.
I mean, do you think that the editing is much easier these days? Is it a better art form, or does it?
That's a difficult one, because I have cut on Avid, or at least I've put films together on Avid. It's the way I can think about it is that you don't have to think so much. If you're on film, you've got to think before you cut it, because you physically have to cut the film. On an Avid or an electronic system now, you just do it, and if it doesn't work, you just go erase or go back or whatever. It's very quick. So probably, and also it's too fast today. They trim it and trim it and trim it without thinking. So you lose some of the original thoughts, or at least that's my feeling. But then I'm older. Guys that play these video games, they want things to flash bang, and they don't care about if it's correct, if it's cut correctly, if it goes left to right or right to left. Don't worry about that. Feature films, it's still much better if you're lucky enough to work on them.
As you say, the pace of cutting is much shorter cuts. It's faster. It's designed to, well, not made for people with reduced concentration spans or anything, but just certainly for an audience
lack of concentration.
to a quicker a pace of things, and probably more content fighting for their attention as well. So perhaps there's a constant need for by studios to gloss things up more than that there was in the past. I mean, what do you think is the secret to being a good editor in terms of feel of
A good editor basically tries to, with the material, it's very difficult to say what's good editing is. That's why people really don't know what we do, because you don't know what material you've got. It depends how much they've shot, how much money there is, how much cover you have. And I mean, say on a Bond film with John, there was so much cover, you could start it any way you like. You could start on a close shot, wide shot, zoom shot, over shoulders, mystery shot, upside down if you wanted to. But once you've done that, you started, you've got to continue. But you've got to let people know where you are. Don't confuse them too much. And it's the storytelling, basically. Editing is telling a story in like a jigsaw puzzle.
I mean, with someone like John Glenn, who has an editing background, that must be very helpful to you as an editor, because he's probably thinking of the editing process at once.
Well, I mean, we would run the rushes together, and he would sit next to me, and if it were 3 takes, he'd say second, or he'd nudge me.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't take notes because it's in the dark. Some people take notes.
Yeah. So would you say John was perhaps the best director you worked with because of that kind of shorthand?
That's a difficult one to say. He was a very good action director, but he would have been he wouldn't have been any good on Labyrinth, which was Jim Henson's. I mean, they're all different styles. I mean, he has a style. That's why he did action movies. Yeah.
I wonder.
The best director I worked with Bob Wise.
Oh right, yes.
But I was an assistant on the sound with Alan Soames on The Haunting. That was a fantastic experience. You know, working with, and with David Lean. I mean, I lived with David Lean for 18 months. We were in Spain and then America, and as an assistant.
So the editor's job is not only necessarily just be in the cutting room after the film is done, but a lot of the time you're out there as it's being.
I mean, on a feature film, if you're lucky, the editor should go on the floor and work with the director. A lot of editors don't like it. Most editors today will sit in a dark room or possibly with a window and never go on the floor. I mean, that's such a shame. I mean, I had a wonderful career because of go on the floor, and if you're doing process work, you'd have to prepare everything, go on the floor with what they call projection plates, working with all sorts of people. I love it on the floor.
Yes, the most exciting part of it, I would have thought.
You can get some wrong ideas if you go on the floor, and if you fall in love with one of the girls, you might try and sort of imbalance the picture by playing too much on her, which happened to what picture was it? Well, Nicholas Alexandra, the director of that one. What was his name? Nicholas Alexandra. Where was his name? I can't remember. Can't say. My memory's going a bit now. But he fell in love with Janet Sutzman and unbalanced the picture. Ernie Walter was the editor. I was the assistant, and Sam Spiegel, the producer, said the picture's going wrong, and he asked me if I would reorder all the dialogue scenes, which was a very costly expense. We were in Madrid, and it was all processed in London, and to keep it secret from the director, and to recut the dialogue scenes, which I did, which is very good for me for an assistant, very exciting. And Ernie Walter was still doing the director's cut, but that's just an inside story and how things work. And you've got to have a lot of money for that.
Well, yes, that's right. I was just going back to the Secret Partner for a second. It was directed by Basil Dearden.
Basil Dearden, yes.
Basil at all?
Did what?
Do you remember working with Basil Dearden?
Well, only meeting him, I was just a junior assistant.
Yeah.
I didn't sort. I wasn't in awe of him or anything. I didn't. He was a director, and I was so young and a little bit naive, I suppose. It was exciting.
Yeah.
And Stuart Granger. It was more interesting when we did the looping, when you actually go to the, to post sync the dialogue where it's bad, and to go in the theatre where you loop it and go round and round, because then you're with them and you can talk about other things. I mean, he was married to someone and he was talking about it. And it's like sort of gossip column. That was good fun. Those are the things I remember about it. Otherwise, I don't remember the picture. It wasn't particularly good.
Yeah. So it sounds like those looping sessions were very interesting. So you would go in with someone like Vernon, and you would, work with it. And
yeah, sure. I mean, if you were a sound assistant, you'd prepare all this stuff. So it was all written down. All the dialogue was written down, and a massive amount of paperwork.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Today it's a bit easier because you've all got video clips now, but we just had to print up in black and white and cut it and join it into loops with a sort of 1, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, so they knew when they were going to start, and hopefully record it on a 3-track magnetic and 3 goes at it. And then once the three were done, put another sound loop up if needed. So you had a choice, especially if you were revoicing somebody, which would be difficult.
Yeah. I was just wondering if you had any memories of working on Carry On Jack, because I think they were quite sort of.
Well, I was an MGM first assistant then, and they loaned me out if I wasn't on the picture, they loaned me out to Carry On Jack, which was, it was a load of rubbish, but it was fun. It was great fun, and once again there I was on the sound, loaned out to go on the sound. It was in the theatre where with all these well-known sort of characters and the stories that they told, but they were very much a family team. But and I was an outsider coming there, but I mean I enjoyed it.
Yeah, even the bad ones are still.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, the thing is, I was at Pinewood. But I'm sorry, I was based at MGM, and I got travel allowance to go to Pinewood. So I was getting paid to drive there and back again.
Talking of different studios, do you have a studio that you are the most fond of, or the one you thought was the best one to work in?
Well, because I started at MGM, I loved it there, but then it closed down. The best studio now is Pinewood, but it's a great big film factory. There's all our lovely cutting rooms are gone. So, I mean, people work. I think a lot of people work at home in the cutting rooms. They work offline, at home.
Yeah. Because everyone I speak to, when we talk about Pinewood, they always say, yeah, it was the best studio. What made it the best studio?
I don't know. It's a lovely place to work in. It's in the countryside, and it had a beautiful restaurant. The cafeteria was a bit grotty, but the restaurant where editors would eat in was lovely. And in the summer being the garden, they got a bar, 2 bars they had then, because that's all taboo now. There's no drinking in film studios anymore.
No, yeah.
That was half time. I always insisted when I got senior that we would break, even when working in London, always have an hour off for lunch, because you cannot just live on sandwiches and never get up from the desk. You've got to get up, open up, your eyes can relax, and have a glass of beer or something. No, I don't get pissed, but I mean to have a glass of beer and the chat and the social thing. Because there's never today, many editors work completely on their own, have no assistants, and it can be very lonely.
Yeah, I think a lot of workplaces are like that. Unfortunately, they're very lonely. They're very sort of eat your lunch.
Or one assistant deals with hundreds of people in sort of production houses and that. Although that's where most people have to start now.
Yeah. I was interested in the relationship between you and the sound designers, the composer. How closely would you work together with the different departments?
Well, you're talking as an editor then, you mean with a senior position, yeah. I mean, although
Yeah.
I was an assistant on Goodbye, Mr. Chips,
Mm.
which I've just actually written something about that for our Guild magazine. But that was very stimulating because it was John T. Williams before he was a big time, before Jaws and that. It was 1968.
Mm.
And that was a picture where I was on the music side with an American music editor and went on location with them all the time with the crew. That was a thing that happened for someone in the cutting rooms, but someone that had quite a lot of experience.
Mm.
That was good fun. But as an editor, you're depending who's chosen as a musician or composer or sound designer. I mean, I've worked with Vernon or Colin a lot because they were people I knew would never let me down. They're not the only people I've worked with, but you can sort of hand it on a Bond sound. Everybody thinks about the Bonds, but they did Life Force and other pictures.
Mm.
You can't take all that responsibility yourself. You've got to have someone you can trust.
Yeah.
And someone you get on with, because you live with your crew more than you do with your wife and family.
Yeah.
Especially if you're on location.
Mm. Yeah, that's right. I had a question come in. On most films, did you find that the director was always around when you were editing, or was some?
That depends on the editor. Oh, sorry, it depends on the director.
Yeah.
Because some, if they know you well enough, they leave you alone. And today, I think you send them cut sequences. But in the days when we're working on film, where you didn't transfer it to video or anything, they would come into the cutting rooms, run sequences. That's the social time. That's the creative time. That's where the films are made together. You know, shall we try this? Can we do that? Don't like that. Should we get rid of that? Can you change that? Can you move this there? And that's with a director like John, who knows what he's talking about, editing wise. But if you have directors that are writers, that is more difficult because then they don't want to lose any dialogue because they've written it. And sometimes they need changing. It depends a lot on the director. I mean, it's a working experience, and that very creative time. That's the best time.
Yeah.
And fortunately, on the pictures I was on, we had plenty of time to do it. Well, usually, but nowadays it's too fast, not enough time, unfortunately. And sometimes it shows.
Yes, it does sometimes, unfortunately. I want to ask about 2001: A Space Odyssey. That must have been quite.
Well, that was just something. I mean, I was, as once again, I was an assistant then, but sort of as an assistant, I've done some good pictures. And Win Ryder, who was the sound editor, Stanley wanted someone to do the breathing in space because it's like a sort of music in space. Well, I was called on to do that, and just for 6 months I was doing that. And Stanley would, you talk to him and you do all the sequences in space. I mean, there weren't too many where it was floating around. That's what the sort of thing. But where the astronaut was supposed to be, floating around, there's no dialogue, no music. It's just breathing. Well, Stanley talked to me and he said, "I want you've got to put the helmet on." So it means I had to be rigged up with a helmet. And every single movement that I made, if you had something on it, and if you had a tick in your throat, like especially now when my voice is going, you couldn't cough or anything like you had. It was breathing, and so I set it up that we recorded on 2 35 soundtracks, so that I could then cut from one to the other, because Stanley didn't like anything retransferred because you're losing a generation of sound. He was very particular. But I would do this and say it take all day to record it, a week to recut it and put it in sync and do what I thought was right. And then I'd have to go and see Stanley in his office. And he'd be wearing a blue suit with a nasal inhaler, a Vic inhaler up both nostrils because it was winter time. And he didn't want to catch you, frightened of catching anything. And you'd arrange with David Wild, the first assistant, when you could book the theatre and you'd run it in the theatre for him. And he would sit at the front with a very new thing, a little tape recorder, and just make verbal notes. Then he'd come out after, however long it'd take, 20 minutes of running time or something. And he'd say, yeah, very good, do it again. No, never suggested what was wrong, but just do it again. And I think that's what he did with a lot of people, because he didn't know what was going to be right until he heard it or saw it. Right. So I think that's why artists with Stanley do hundreds of takes. He's after one particular thing, which he can't explain exactly what he wanted. But it was an experience. I thought the picture was, when we were on it, it was so long. And to keep running that film, God, it was boring. I mean, it's sort of a specialist picture. He's very ahead of his time and beautifully photographed. But no, I mean, that was a good experience. But everybody talks about that because of Stanley, because he's so famous.
Yes, yes.
So if you watch 2001 and where you have nothing except breathing, that is me.
Ah, right. I should look out for that. Yes.
I don't get residuals. And no credit either.
I mean, I don't know when nowadays whether you would get credit on. I don't think it's that in those days.
Well, on a Canon film, every single person who was on it got a credit, because Golden and Globus thought that if you had a name on the end, everybody would buy the video or the DVD. There was videos then.
Right.
Than the Canon films, and they make more money out of that than they would in the cinema.
That does bring me.
You've frozen.
Oh, can you still hear me? Okay, John.
I can hear you, but your picture's frozen.
Hopefully, I'm freezing a minute. That brings me very nicely on to Life Force.
Oh, it's coming back again.
Oh, brilliant. I want to touch on Life Force mainly because of the of Canon and the producers being notorious.
Gangsters.
Yeah. Was that an interesting?
Well, I mean, I can't remember what picture I was working on first. I got a call from Michael Kagan and said, "Will I go and see Tobe Hooper?" And I got on very well with him initially. I mean, later on, I mean, he got so involved with drugs, and I wasn't into that. I smoked a pipe, but not in drugs. And it was, it would be so much different if it was shot today. I mean, we were trying to, I mean, just to say, it was interesting and really, and Alan Hume was the cameraman, and he was given carte blanche to set it up, all this floating stuff in space, which was once again not a space movie, I don't know why. But it was interesting, and I had complete say with that picture until the very end when we delivered it. I mean, I got on with Tobe, we went over to America. They ran out of money, so I had to pay I had took Matthew Glenn with me and Vernon, not Vernon, who did I take? Oh, Rick Hiscott with me, who was doing the visual effects with, or they were optical effects with John Dykstra. I'm trying to remember names. John Dykstra from Industrial Light and Magic. Well, they're very expensive because Matt and I physically scratched on the picture little lines each frame, so that you had. I'd love to have kept some of that because that's how we started it. You know, the ideas, and they came from all ideas come from the Cunninghams, a lot of them anyhow. Especially on pictures like that where nobody really knew how it would go. I mean, Matilda May, I've told that story before. Matilda May was absolutely gorgeous, but you couldn't get away with what she came down the stairs the first time. I decided I have to be careful saying this. I said it before. In fact, I did it on the Golden Globus film. I think, who was it? Somebody recorded it. Oh, Cullum did a film of me and Vernon down in Marlow talking about it. It's about the Canon Empire. Yes. You must have seen that probably.
Yeah, Electronic Boogaloo or something like that.
Yeah,
yeah.
All, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it.
And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australian company doing it. Yeah. And it was an Australi So I talked about that and didn't realize what I was saying. And it was all on that film, because when she came down the stairs, absolutely stark naked, and she had the most enormous hairy pubic area, far too aggressive for a film that you wouldn't get an 18 then. I mean, nowadays it wouldn't matter, but then. So I had to go and see Tobe on the floor and say, Tobe, I'm afraid Russia's this morning. You're never going to get away with that. Why not? Why not? It's completely natural. I said, when he saw it, he reshot it and said, right, okay, we'll trim it all down then. So who do we ask to do that? Hairdressing or wardrobe or the makeup? Because it wasn't a wardrobe, it wasn't a wig or anything on top of it.
Yes.
So they that's how it all got shortened down a bit. It's all in the film, but that came from the cutting rooms.
Yeah.
And then what else do you want to know about the picture? Sound, because the sound was very aggressive, very good. And music, we had music, so many different types of musicians did it. The music in the end was horrible. It was all chords. Initially we had, who did we have do it originally? Oh God, I can't remember, sorry. Very famous. I have to remember who those people. My memory, I'm afraid my memory is not as good as it was.
That's okay.
Name, do you know who the composer was given the credit on the picture?
I'm just going to double check that a second. Yeah, speaking of Life Force, when I went to see Vernon, as you know, he has a great home cinema setup.
Yeah.
He was very kind enough to show about 40 minutes of Life Force with me, just watching it and
only explaining. Oh, that's good. That's an easy way of doing it. Yeah, I'm glad you did that. That's good.
Yeah, and I remember never seen the film before. And of course, knowing it's a Canon film, whenever you see the Canon logo, you're not sure if it's going to be, awful or just bad.
That film was one they said they wanted it to be a blockbuster, so it didn't spare any amount of money. They spent a lot of money making it. I think they've got their money back now because it's a cult film, isn't it?
I think it's just about to get another release. I think it's a 4K release coming up. So it seems to get a lot of attention, and I was struck by.
I hope it's the long version, because the long version, at the end, when I had to go I had to go to South Africa because I was contracted to do Circles in the Forest, I think, and it went on and on and on, way over budget, and I didn't want to lose the other picture, so I had to leave it, and I think somebody else came on with Golan and the Globers. These will take that out, and physically just slash the picture to get it down to length, to get it slightly shorter. And of course, the picture died because it lost all its story.
Yeah.
But the original one, which I'm sure that'll be the one that's re-released.
Yeah, I've got the feeling that they only have all the elements for the theatrical version, sadly, but it's going to be a remastered Blu-ray for the long versions. I don't think they had all the elements to work with for whatever reason, but
they probably chucked them.
Yeah, both versions are going to be on the release, so that's I think probably
would be interesting.
The main thing. It was Henry Mancini was the composer.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and of course Hank. Sorry, I should have remembered that. Hank came over and came into the cutting and ran a bit, and we ran into Pinewood for him, and I was at Elstree on the picture. We ran into Pinewood. I don't know why that was, but because we had better projection there, I think, or we could get in. We had a car over there talking, and we went into the restaurant there, and Henry Mancini, of course, was so well known to all the other producers. And there was I as an editor sitting there with Henry Mancini, having a wonderful lunch. And then he said, "Shall we have a cigar?" So we sat there and smoked a cigar together, because he wasn't supposed to smoke, and he said he was away on a trip, he could. He's a lovely man.
I was going to ask you, we had a question come in about the new professionals, and
blimey, I cut that on Avid. Yes, very clean, lots of burns and guns, but no blood.
Yeah,
What did you want to know about it?
We just want to know sort of how you came to work on the New Professionals, and maybe a couple of highlights from because obviously people like Brian Clemens, Ray Austin, any names that sort of linger from that time.
Well, I mean, we had so many directors on it. I'm trying to think how many directors there were on that first New Professional. I did actually write them down because I couldn't have created. Chris King,
Yeah,
Ray Austin, Sid Ayres. Sid Ayres was an old man. Harley Cochlis, Ken Grieve, and John Davies, and Colin Buxey. All those directors. So I mean, they were. It was a small budget. All I think they were half hour, or were they hour? Very short stories.
yeah.
And I mean, it was a good experience, but they were a little bit clean.
Yeah.
They were a bit sort of not when I say clean, I mean we had you know, they're supposed to be special agents and this and the other. They were athletic. And who was the girl in it? She was quite attractive, but not one of my greatest hits. Does whoever asks you this question, he likes them, or is he?
He says that there were the 50-minute episodes. Yes, a 50-minute story.
Yeah, oh, 50 were they? Yeah.
Yeah, and
no, I know. There's hardly any time to set the story up. And the first series, when you said Edward Woodward, we used to call him Woodward. He was an old man then.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a good actor though.
Oh yeah. I think it's a pity that show didn't go to a second series, because I think it may have found its feet at that point. But it was
they didn't pick up another series, Thames TV or whatever it was. No.
Did you remember Brian Clemens, the creator of the show? Would he have an input, or was it?
Did I?
You remember Brian Clemens, who?
The writer.
Yeah, would he?
Well, I met him, but he didn't really come into the cutting rooms. He might have seen them because we used to make a video for them.
Yeah.
And just, you know, would get it down, and anything they didn't like, we could change if we had the material. There wasn't an awful lot of things we could have done with it, just to speed it up a bit. Sometimes we could do a bit of dialogue in place, replacement, but we didn't have the money for digital effects or anything. And everything was basically real. It happened, it was there. I mean, the train coming through in South Africa, that was a good sequence. Yeah. Train busting through the doors and that.
I mean, do you prefer working on things that are a bit more realistic or in camera as opposed to?
Oh, I don't mind. I love comedy, because comedy, you want to be really careful on that, because you can destroy it if you see it too many times. Yeah. So it's so difficult for an editor to remember when they first see it. When you first see rushes or dailies, or whatever you want to call it, that is the impression you get, and that's what an audience is going to get the first time they see it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we even on the Bonds that we cut them too tight, and if you get an audience that was in a good mood, they would laugh more, and then they would miss the incoming lines sometimes. So that comedy is difficult. But enjoyable to do. If you can make people laugh or cry, as Cubby used to say, if you get a laugh is worth $1 million. Yeah. That's what we worked out.
Brings us nicely onto the Bond films. How did you end up working on Spy Who Loved Me? How did you get into the
well, I'd worked with John on some picture shot in the River Plate or something, as a help out, you know, just to do something as an assistant. Yeah. When they had a recutting or regrading or something, I don't know about. There's only about 4 weeks work, and because I mean I'd known him, of course, but not socially. He lived near where I lived, and when he got this offer to cut it, he asked me if I was available, and so I jumped it, of course, because to work on a Bond was a great privilege those days. Well, it is today. Yeah. And we did the opening sequence where John went to Baffin Island and left me in the cutting rooms, and they shot all this sequence out there, and I'd report back to him by telephone if we could get through to him, because he couldn't see the stuff. You know, it wasn't sent back out there. I mean, we're talking about a long time ago now. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then we came back and put it together. And of course, that's, I mean, Cubby nearly pulled it because it ran over so long. If you talk to John Glenn about this, they were out in Baffin Island for a long time and the weather was getting worse and worse. And this guy, the skier, could only do it once. He said he would only do it once. And it only got caught. We had, was it 3 or 4 cameras on it, and only one got it, Alan Hume. And that's how Alan got one of the bombs to light. It's all context.
It's a fabulous shot, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Way down. I think if it hadn't been a one shot, I don't think it would have worked. So
no,
well.
But today, of course, he would never do it today. They would. People don't believe that was real.
Yeah.
It wasn't a digital effect. It wasn't a blue background or a green background or a digital shot. It was real. Everything in that film was real, even apart from those awful traveling back shots of Bond skiing.
Yes.
And they would be a lot better today because they really weren't very good. That's why they're so short.
And of course we get more into the fantasy world with Moonraker, and of course it's less real, more special effects. Did Moonraker pose any interesting challenges?
Well, the interesting thing, we made that in France, so we were all living in France for 6 months, and on the 2 studios we're in, and it was John and I to start with, or John and me, and then I had two French assistants to do the numbering because it's new to them, and we had a lovely time there. Not a lot of money. We got, I think I paid about 40 quid a week, and we had 40 quid a week expenses. Yeah. Because and then in those days that was a lot of money. We used to go skiing at the weekend because Lewis Gilbert didn't like working on Saturdays. In fact, the French don't work at the weekend like we do. Yeah. So it was only a 5-day week, although the cutting room sometimes worked on Saturday to try and catch up a bit. But we used to go skiing at the weekend because we didn't have one. Well, if we didn't have, we went home. That was an interesting picture. Yeah. Interesting. And once again, underwater and space, very slow. Yeah. And we had to skip frame some of the stuff, which today, I mean, it looked a bit dodgy. And some of the stuff in Iguazu looked awful today. I mean, the boat coming over the Iguazu Falls, that was pathetic. Well, because today it would be 100 times better, but it was one of the poorest shots in the picture.
Well, I think it's quite an effective shot, but you say that there's certain telltale signs that it's processed and of that nature.
Well, no, the Iguazu Fall, it wasn't processed. That was a real thing going over the falls, but it just didn't work because it got stuck. Yes. All sorts of, I mean, I wasn't there because, I mean, I think John Richardson did that, didn't he? Was it John Richardson?
Yeah, John did that, yeah.
Have you spoken to him?
Over the phone, not like this yet, but we're hoping to.
Oh, he's very good. He's very up to date with it. He's younger than me, so that's all
right. So when we came to the big space battle at the end of the film, I know it was awfully difficult to actually make.
We didn't have lasers or anything. What we did was scratch the film, and then Derek Meddings duped it and put the laser flares on it. Yeah. They weren't done. I mean, today you could do it on a machine on its own. You could just put them on.
So because of all the amount of time it took to do all the special effects work, and was there more film produced for?
Oh yeah, we had massive. I mean, anything that Derek was shooting was high speed stuff. You know, space explosions and stuff like that. And so for rushes, when we showed it to Cubby, we'd cut all that run up off with the machine because it was shot on film. It wasn't digital; it was film.
Yeah.
Everything. I suppose we probably had 750,000 feet of film on that.
Wow.
Mass.
Yeah. So that is what, maybe almost double what you have on normal film, or percentage wise, sort of.
Well, today, I mean, the thing is, they don't worry about it today. They just put it on a chip.
Yeah.
Well, except big films are still shooting on film. Some of them are, you know.
Yeah, I think all the good directors, and particularly ones that, established directors.
Yeah, because they have it's. I think film has a little bit more color or something in it. Something that they like. The cameramen like about it.
Yeah, it's a bit more. It's not so clean, and it has
Yeah.
more of a lived-in quality, perhaps. When John Glenn took over For Your Eyes Only as a director, was a natural progression that you would be the
Well,
editor?
that was like being part of the family. Yes, I mean,
Yes.
it happened with a lot of people. I mean, the art department when Ken Adam died, or Peter Lamont took over, and Peter Lamont's gone now. Pity you never had a chance to talk to him. He's a lovely man.
I was fortunate enough to meet him at a couple of.
Oh, you did?
Had a few brief conversations, so I appreciate
Well,
that.
at the Bond conventions at Pinewood. Did you
Yeah,
come to some of those?
a couple of Pinewood, yeah, and a couple of others. He went to. I think he went to one in Birmingham, and I met him there. And
Yeah.
but yeah, at Pinewood, I had a nice chat with him and stuff. So yeah,
Very
quite,
talented man. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I just find I was so lucky to be on those pictures with all this great talent.
Yeah. I mean, do you remember much about the being on set on For Your Eyes Only, for example, and any of the cast or anything that jumps out?
For Your Eyes Only. That's the first one I cut. Yeah. Well, where did we shoot that? Where was that shot in Corfu, wasn't it?
Yeah, Corfu. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was there, and I mean, the first 2 or 3 days was very difficult for John because they were shooting on the beach with the buggies, and the dune buggies kept getting bogged in, and all the big heavy executives from MGM UA came over, put the pressure on John because he was behind by a day on day 3. And of course, on a Bond film, that is, well, in those days, it was probably £1 million a day.
Right.
Today, it's even more. All the staff and that, because there's much larger crews.
Yeah.
We had quite a small crew on that, really. And everything was for real. We didn't know digital effects. No, did we have optical effects on it? Can't remember. No. Yeah, it was a very good. I mean, the difference on that film is where the titles with Maurice Binder, because we did that with Sheena Easton for real. And that's the first time that had been the first time that happened in a Bond film, which is interesting.
Do you remember Maurice Binder particularly? Yes.
Oh, very well. Yes, worked on a lot of, not only Bond, did Wild Geese, Sea Wolves, all with Maurice Binder, and other pictures. I can't remember all of them. But he and Sol Bass, he was really Sol Bass's protege. He was a madman. He loved the strange guy. He shoot. I'm trying to think of the thing. He'd have a unit of his own at the end on a Bond. Well, he'd want 20 girls, all with nothing on, absolutely nude, so that he could do these sort of silhouette shots. He was a bit of a voyeur, I fear, or might have been. And some funny things. I mean, he liked the cutting rooms because we provided him with the good stuff. He nearly ruined Spy Who Loved Me because the opening shot, he wanted to use that in the trailer, and took the original negative from the labs to produce something off and put a scratch on it. A little hairline scratch all the way down the celluloid from putting it through a projector at NSS. But fortunately, I don't know why they got rid of it somewhere. Today, it would be easy to get rid of, but in those days, it had to be polished out.
Yeah, it's a very scary moment, I would have thought, yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to Octopussy, you're credited as the supervising editor. Was there?
Well, only because Peter Davis came on, and because each department had a supervisor, they put me as supervisor. Otherwise, it would have been just 2 editors.
Mm.
And it really just meant I was in charge, because
Yeah.
people, we had at certain times we had so much material, so many units shooting, that it's impossible for one person when we have a delivery date to meet the dates.
Mm.
So Henry Richardson came on, and I think Eric Boyd Perkins came on, Peter Musgrave, oh no, he came on the sound, I think. But to just help out, it's like a football team at one time, especially with sound, because we start a Bond film, and it's going to take 6 months to shoot.
Mm.
So you're going to, and in the end of the 6 months, it's 3 months, and it's got to be released open worldwide.
Mm.
So you've got to cut it and go along as you're making the film. You don't have too much time. So if you lost a day, or say Roger was sick or Tim was ill, and they lost a day shooting, that came off our end. It got shorter and shorter. So you get more and more people, and sometimes it doesn't always pay off, because you get slight differences. But overall, it was they were team efforts.
Mm. And did you get to go to the India locations on?
No, I sent Peter there.
Yeah.
He loved it.
Oh.
No, I didn't want to go to India. Too much responsibility, because I had all the other units shooting. It's not only the main unit, you've got the model unit shooting, you've got more than Binzer shooting, and also I think the office in certain way wanted me to stay in charge at home, because I had to communicate with John in India through was it a punch card system? Punched, what do they call it? It wasn't a telegraph system, but it was a telegraph system. To go into the office with Iris Rose, and I'd give a report, and she would type it out, and then it would be fed into something which would punch holes in the tape, and then that would go over the airwaves somewhere. Not today, pick up a cell phone, but John, reshoot that.
Yeah.
And of course, all waiting for lab reports and that. No, it's a huge machine.
Yeah, that sounds rather. Yeah, I think people forget the problems of, you being, say, based at Pinewood, and somebody being half around the
other side of the world, and then another company in Iguazu, shooting stuff there.
Yeah.
Or the Willy Bogner ski unit, although that wasn't on that one. No, they were another units.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with Bond. There's so many different locations and so many different pieces to put together, and so many balls in the air. So you need, you say, someone as good as yourself to sort of make sense of it all, and because otherwise it could very easily get out of hand potentially.
Sure. I mean, when the monks were, where was that, on Corfu? I think the monks didn't want us to film a particular high place.
Oh yes,
so they hung all their washing out. Well, today it wouldn't matter, because you just take it out. But then we had to. I don't know what they did. They shot round it, or I don't think you could see any waving stuff in the stuff we cut.
Yeah, I think one of the best sequences in Few Eyes Only is the bit where Bond is kicked off the mountain and he's climbing back up, and I think that's perfectly
well, done in the studio. Climbing's done in the studios with Roger.
Yeah, but
I mean, they all work well.
Yeah, I mean, you have Rick Sylvester's fall off the mountain, and then of course Roger in the studio, and the mixture of the two, and I think that is a seamless bit of editing. You keep the suspense.
Well, that is you've got to believe it's all happening, not all bits. It's storytelling and bits and pieces, jigsaw puzzle. Hundreds of cuts on that.
As you're saying about keeping the pace of it, and
well, that's once you've got the thing together, then you've got to think, well, how long do we want the picture? Picture's got to be 2 hours and 12 minutes. That's the maximum we were on then. You're frozen again. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I still hear you, John. So I'm sure.
It looks as you've fallen asleep.
No, still very much awake. Yeah.
Wake up, yes. I don't know where I've fallen asleep. No. It's coming. You come back to life again.
I did have a question. Many editors went on to become directors. John Glenn
Yep.
being a good example. Was that ever something that you wanted to do?
No, because I'm not well enough read. I admit that. And the director's got to be well read. That was partly one of John's problems, I fear, why he only did certain action pictures. I think if he had to do a picture, very emotional picture or something, I don't think he'd be, let's be careful using this, he wouldn't be sympathetic enough.
Yeah. Well, when I spoke to John recently, I think he was saying that he considered himself very much an action director.
Yeah, he was. He was much more in his element then. Yeah, and he didn't have the ultimate responsibility. Because once you're the director, the buck ends there. You're in charge. They don't care about the editor. They don't care about the musicians, or sometimes they might do, but or the producer. It's the director, and if it's good, he gets the credit.
Yeah. I mean, you did quite a few pictures with Roger Moore, 2 Bond films, sequels, Wild Geese. Any memories of Roger Moore?
Roger was the nicest person you could imagine, and very comfortable to be with, and very polite, and loved the cutting rooms because he knew that he really wasn't a very good actor, and he really and he didn't like guns and things like that, which many actors don't like guns, especially what's happening now. So no, he's my favorite Bond, of course. I mean, Tim was a good actor and very athletic. Had arguments with him because he insisted on smoking, and we had a directive that if we were going to put a 12 certificate picture out, you couldn't have smoking in it. You had to, and of course Tim insisted on smoking, and then he challenged me saying, "Why did I cut all the smoking out?" I said, "You're not allowed to use it." And so, I mean, I used to smoke, God heavens. And if you see someone take a cigarette out and put it in their mouth and click, 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 it makes everybody else want to smoke. Oh, I will have a fag, you know.
Yeah.
It's very, and we, you know, we felt very responsible, like drinking on films now.
Yeah. I was just going to say that Roger Moore was my favorite Bond, and yeah, I know he was always from interviews, very critical about his own acting ability. But if you look at something like The Man Who Haunted Himself, you could see that if he and Wild Geese as well, if he had more, I think the problem
well, Wild Geese was Andrew McLaglen. It's a different director.
Yeah.
And he didn't have. It wasn't a comedy part.
Yeah.
Which Bonds basically with Roger were tongue in cheek and lovely girls, and I mean he hated getting into bed with that young girl who was on was it no not For Your Eyes, no skated one, the little girl. Sorry, my memory's going a bit.
Yes, somebody Johnson, I think she was called.
Yeah,
I think everyone will know who we mean. Yes, she played BB in the
BB, yeah.
In the film, yes.
I mean, she was lovely, but I mean, although the funny thing was on Moon, which was Carol Bouquet?
Oh, that was that was For Eyes Only. Yeah.
For Your Eyes Only. Well, we did our footsteps, or the Foley of footsteps, and that in France, because we'd had such a good service on Moonraker. I mean, and we took them over to Remy Julien and did them over there. No, not Remy Julien. Remy Julien was the driver. Anyhow, I can't remember. But then I would go over there to check them with a sound editor. And at the end of it, my wife came over with me because they were going to give a joint party for me over there. You know, they made a lot of money, and it was a perk sort of thing to come. Anyhow, I got over there, and he took us out to this restaurant, one of the most expensive restaurants it was off the Champs-Elysees. And he said, "Will you sit there?" And my wife sat next to one of his assistants who spoke French. Jenny could speak a little French, but not conversational. And then there was a seat next to me, and I suddenly thought, what's happening here? And what happened that the Carol Bouquet came to dinner as well. And she sat next to me and put her arms around me and said, "Why aren't I going to the premiere?" And because I didn't know. I didn't know she was going. She'd upset the whole because she told the press that kissing Roger was like kissing your grandfather or something, or snogging your grandfather. And she blotted her copybook, and that's why she didn't come. But I didn't know that, which rather ruined my evening, because she is the most beautiful woman. Well, she was, and I think she still is, but she was involved with some druggie. Her boyfriend was a drug addict. And I don't know, it sounds strange, these women attracted to strange men or women.
Yeah, they don't like boring ordinary people like me. They like these.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. So,
but unfortunately, because there's never any photo. We didn't take selfies then. I'd love to have had a picture with Carol Bouquet.
Yeah.
With nothing taken there.
I mean, in the Bond world, there's lots of the actors, particularly the Bond girls, that will go to these conventions. You can meet them, but Carol Bouquet is one of those people that it seems to be fairly.
I've never seen her at a convention. I mean, we had those at Pinewood. Did you come to any of those at Pinewood? Did you come to the ones at Pinewood?
Yeah, never been to any events that I've known about. So whether she's not interested or whether she just likes to be out. So I think she's one of those people that, as fans, we don't really know too much about. Say
maybe it makes it mysterious.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Carol Lowe again. She was lovely. I mean, I have met some of them again.
Yeah.
Like over the weekend when we were up at Aberdeen, there was someone who I hadn't worked with. Wasn't Martine, one of the Bond girls, Martine Beswick.
Beswick, yes.
Beswick.
Yeah.
She was she's 80. She looked fantastic, and she was absolutely greatest fun you could imagine. Terrific to be with.
They've all got very good genes, I think. The Bond ladies,
and she insisted on being called a Bond girl. But a Bond girl, she was a Bond girl, and she'd lived on it. I recognized her from Man with the Golden Gun or one of whatever picture. No, she did Thunderball and sorry, Russia was up.
Yeah.
And some of her stills that are taken there, she was a really raunchy girl. She was terrific, but she still is great fun. And I must say, I really enjoyed it.
I mean, so of all the leading ladies that you've had on your Bonds, so
Carol Lowe.
She was your favourite to work with.
They were all lovely because you look so close at them when you can understand. You're looking at their eyes and their nose, and the big close up. You're only looking at this bit here, and the facial movements and that, and it's all sort of in such great detail on a small screen you're looking at. Not like today when you're editing on. I was working on a movie or a steam deck.
Yeah.
But you do get very close to them, and you meet them in a lift or something, and you sort of think, God, I know you so well. I know where every zit and little mark on your face is.
Yeah. And it helps that they're so photogenic and easy
to. Yeah. Well, they've all got the most beautiful skin. Because the first script out there with Tim had been written for Roger, and Tim isn't very good at saying funny lines.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't have the asides like Roger did.
And because, as you say, I think Timothy Dalton's always been perceived as being a much more serious actor, whereas Roger was, the jolly Roger people used to.
Yeah, Roger was enjoying it, by trying to make it fun.
Because I suppose with such a long shoot, you have to make it fun, don't you? Because if everybody's serious all the time, it's.
Oh God! When things went wrong on the set, Roger was great. He would sense something was going wrong. If something didn't work, or effects didn't work, or something, and then he'd go out and buy a whole load of sweets just to pass around to the crew,
right? Just
to try and sort of lighten things up a bit. Because as soon as you start getting behind the production department, Tony Wales will be on the set saying, "You've got to get off this set by such and such a time. What's gone wrong?" And then he'd be told to F off. We're trying to do it.
Yeah. So Anthony Way was quite good to work with, but he's obviously had to be quite.
Oh yeah, he was good production manager. Yeah, and then associate producer or want to record himself.
Yeah.
Have you interviewed him?
He's on my wish list.
Yeah.
hoping to, perhaps.
Oh yeah, no, he's still around.
Hmm.
If you
Yeah,
go back, a lot of people are not now. It's really sad.
I think as fans, we forget how old these
How old are they? They're all 40 years old, the ones we worked on. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course they look so great, don't they, on the Blu-rays and things, and you unless there's something in a film that particularly dates it fashion-wise or technology, most of these films seem to be fairly timeless, really. I think it's probably why they're still around, because they
Yeah.
are timeless stories, and and made, with great people such as yourself. I did want to ask what the relationship was like with Cubby Broccoli, because you're saying about Bond being a family, and obviously him being the
Well,
head.
he was the one that we all respected. Everybody loved Cubby. Cubby was the boss. He was an old time producer. He would answer things. He was accessible to everybody. And if you had any family problems or something, he was very family orientated. And so was his wife, Dana. And things, people do get upset, people get hurt. And he was very sympathetic. He was a great producer. I mean, Barbara and Michael are more commercial than Cubby was, I think. Wow. Saltzman wasn't a particularly pleasant person.
Right.
I mean, Cubby, I mean, we adored him. We loved him. We'd do anything. We used to dub the rushes for him, put gunshots in, because, squibs on the floor don't make the name of a gun. Explosions are just petrol going up. So we put bangs and things like that to make it real. We do a presentation for him. I'll be doing it as well. We'd all do the whole cutting room, getting ready, dubbing the rushes.
Yeah, he sounds like a great person to have worked with, and somebody you want to do anything for, really. So that's great. I do have one question. When it comes to dubbing actors and actresses, there's a lot of, particularly in the early Bond films, a lot of actresses that are dubbed. I mean, as an editor, do you prefer? Is it best to use the actual actor's performance? Is it difficult to deal with somebody's voice that
maybe if they'd got the job because they were beautiful but couldn't speak English, and they became very, you've got to get a good revoice artist to put the emotion into it. I mean, I didn't have too many, only foreign voices we would change. Foreign actors, Italian or something like, sometimes, unless they were supposed to be Italian. But basically, the Bonds I worked on, the people could speak good English, and they were or apart. What was it? No, but in Moonraker we had to revoice one of those pretty girls there, but she just couldn't say. I can't remember who it was now.
Maybe played the Drax's pilot. Corey DeFore, her character was, and I think it was Nikki Vandersel who dubbed her voice.
Well, I mean, you know more about those films than I do, because you're an aficionado of.
Did you ever meet Nikki Vandersel?
Well, we met all of them. Of course, we did meet. Yeah. But not that many people on the floor know what editors do. I mean, Roger did, and so did big time artists. But a lot of the small ones. I mean, I was doing something in France for a television series. What was that called? What was that called? I was in France. Anyhow, we were doing it. It was with Monseigneur Renard. That's right. David Wheatley directing it, and they'd cast a whole lot of Germans and having to speak English. And of course, the accents are so bad. It'd be much better if I had subtitles. But we had to revoice a lot of those. And then they used to come into the cutting rooms. They'd been cast and they were over there on location with us, come into the cutting rooms, and can they see a bit of what they look like? And David would say, go and see what you look like. So then they'd say, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. And I said, well, what advice do you give me as a young actor? I said, every time you come on to say action, give it your all. Don't think you can just ride it. You've got to act. That's what you're paid for.
Yeah.
Even if it's over your shoulder. Performance.
Yeah.
Because that's what shows.
And I do have a question come in. We've already touched on a lot of the elements already, but if you could sum up very briefly, what makes a good editor?
That's such a hard thing to say. I would say someone that has read the script properly and understands it, or tries to understand it, and can get emotionally involved in it. Don't think, well, this is a pile of rubbish, because there are films we've all worked on that really shouldn't have been made. They're done just for cash or for, but you've got to try and make it the best you can. What's a good editor? I don't know. That's so hard to answer. I don't know. I think I'd like to say it was love, but that's difficult to say. The love of what you're doing and trying to get job satisfaction out of it, which is very important to me, or is or was.
Yeah.
I loved going home at the end of the day thinking, I'd had a terrific day today. I would stay and work until I'd finished something, got it sorted out. Otherwise, you come home and you don't sleep because you're churning it over all the time. I've only had one picture I hated.
Right. Yeah.
And I can talk about that because it was absolutely disastrous. It's called Funky Monkey or something. Hairy Tail. It was shot as called Hairy Tail. And it was shot in France. And I was working in London with the writer who was the director, first time picture. And it was such an uncomfortable. We had monkeys dressed up in men, little tiny midget men or small men or whatever, men of short stature dressed up as monkeys trying to play American football. It was absolutely awful.
Yes, it doesn't look like a classic, unfortunately. But, I mean, do you find that when you watch your films, can you distance yourself from them, or do you still have your editor's hat on and think, oh, I should have done this?
No, well, I mean, the bonds, if I run a bond, I mean, if you want to talk about one thing, I'd run it. And then it would remind me of all the problems we had, you know. But otherwise, I probably can't remember them. And they were, you only remember the bad things, the things that didn't work, I think, and you can't remember all the material, you can't remember why you did certain things. I'm just trying to think how I could answer that a better way, because somebody's asked that question before. Why? I can't really recall really well exactly what I would thought. I'm trying to think. You have to ask me the question again, because I've got my brain's going off on tangents. They're thinking of Hairy Tail and things I hated on that, and the bonds and the things that were good on that, and emotional things too. I mean, what David Wheatley did a picture. What was that called? Night? No, not night. No. What was that picture called? I think I've got it on my thing somewhere here. Oh, Nobody's Children. God, that was an emotional picture. It's all about Ceausescu regime and sort of the whole world is happening now, with especially what you deal with. Have you ever seen that picture? The sort of job you do, you should run it. If you could run that film, and to see what it was about in America, it wasn't particularly well done, but I had to sit through some of the most awful stuff to try and find library material of children and stuff. It was very harrowing.
Yeah, sounds like a really good, a worthwhile film.
No, I mean, I've done so many different types of films. I haven't been, I mean, everybody thinks I'm an action movie, but I've actually loved, I've had all sorts of comedies and stupid films and Carry On, as you said.
I mean,
A very varied career.
yeah. I mean, do you find that some editors, like actors and directors, get a bit typecast into, or you do action?
Yeah,
You do,
I think so, yes. I think certain editors are doing all musicals, or all, not that we have musicals now. They musicals I love doing. Goodbye Mr. Chips. And I ran that picture because I was talking to an American writer who's writing a story about John Williams, and he wanted a Zoom meeting about it. So I thought, well, I better run the picture again. It was such a long time ago. It's like 60 years ago. And it was lovely, emotional picture with Petula Clark and Peter O'Toole. Very underrated, came out at the wrong time. It was a roadshow picture with an intermission.
And so when you were at MGM, you were part of the MGM staff, so you would be assigned things.
Assigned to certain pictures, unless somebody asked for me, yeah. But you don't get asked for when you're an assistant unless you've done a picture with them before.
Yeah, and then of course later.
That's how films work. If you get on well with a director who's always working, you'll never be able to work. Although you get out of sync. I got out of sync with John because when he did View to a Kill, I'm glad I didn't do it though, actually, because that was a pity. Although I did go and join him and Peter in France, he invited us over there. That's part of the Cubby Empire. Come over to France for a weekend and have a look at the film and chat. And with Peter and went to the race course and stuff like that when they did the Chantilly sequence. Yes. But you've got to talk to Pete Davis. He's still around.
Oh yeah, I will add to my list of people. Yeah. So you were you just busy on A View to a Kill with other things, or was it?
Oh, I View to a Kill. I was when View to a Kill was done. I was doing.
It might be Labyrinth, I think, possibly.
Oh, it might have been Labyrinth, yeah, which I'm so glad. That was wonderful. That was the happiest picture in my life. Children's picture. Yeah. Jim Henson gave me complete freedom. David Bowie was really difficult because he's a great singer, but not a very good actor. And although he came all right on the film.
Do you have any lasting memories of David Bowie or anything?
Well, only going on the set and seeing him work. Yes, I mean, that was the great privilege then. I mean, as editors, because it was basically a studio-based picture.
Yeah.
And Jennifer Connelly was only a child, and she was absolutely gorgeous, photographed so well. But I mean, stories of that with Jim. He did a slow motion sequence of her running down a passageway, and it was in slow motion. She was a growing girl, and it became extremely sexual because it was all slow motion breast movement, which is not what the film was about. So I had to go and see Jim and say, I'm not sure you're going to like this. And he he agreed with me and reshot it.
Right.
It was a wardrobe malfunction, he called it.
Yeah, some of it is a really good picture, and you say because it was great because if you had the freedom, you had people like Jim, and it just.
I mean, I can say that's the only picture that I've done that my first assembly, apart from tightening stuff up, Jim didn't change.
Right.
Jim didn't change. I mean, the sequence when they went round and round. I mean, I had no idea what it's supposed to be about. Yeah. And it was just playing with it until it sort of worked. I don't know whether Jim really knew what he was doing, because the camera was upside down, and the wild things were really difficult too.
Yeah.
Wild dance with the wild things. But I did a montage sequence, which when you do it on film, because that was on film, I used to just put scribe lines across the picture, and then, and when you first saw it from the labs, we had a test done to see if it did work. and it was beautiful, absolutely, the dance sequence.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Still today is a lovely sequence,
Hmm.
and great music.
Yes, it's a great film, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the probably the one that is on my epitaph, Labyrinth. Yeah, no, that's not true, but I did love it. Very happy film.
Hmm.
And also because got to know Jim, well, he came out to my home, which is unusual. I mean, it was all right. We had several directors come out to my home. Jenny, my wife, was very good at catering. Didn't worry about it, and they made it feel at home. I mean, Ralph Nelson came out here and said, "Oh, this is lovely." Sat in the chair and went to sleep.
So if Labyrinth's your favorite film, do you have a second favorite?
Oh, it would have to be the first one I cut, I suppose. The first one, big picture. Yeah. For Your Eyes Only. Yeah.
Good, only, yeah. So that would be your favorite Bond film of the.
Well, no, my favourite Bond film was actually Spy Who Loved Me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that I worked on because that was such a good picture.
And did you ever visit the Pinewood set with all the submarines and?
Oh yeah, when that was being built. Oh, fantastic! Absolutely. Oh God, the imagination of what's his name, and Peter Lamont. He was a director, art director, so I've got his name now. Ken Adam. Ken Adam, absolutely wonderful imagination.
Yeah.
But he had enough money. You can do it. You can draw these things up and you can build it. And they built the 007 stage for him.
Yeah. So apart from Labyrinth, would the Bond films be the most fun in terms of, because you're like a kid in a candy store and it's
fun pictures were ones where we had no money,
Hmm.
consuming passions.
Yeah.
Little tiny picture. Buddy's song was good fun too, with Roger Daltrey. I mean, we had a absolutely badly, it was Chesney Hawkes, was it? We had a #1 hit song from that film, and they screwed it all up completely. It didn't tie it in with the picture, and it was a lovely little picture. So other films I've done, which been stitched up, I did a film called The Brothers, really for nothing, to help somebody out. I'd never do that again.
Right.
Promises.
A bit like the Canon producers. It sounds a bit like, perhaps.
Yeah.
Sort of. Did you ever meet the Canon producers?
Canon and Globes. Oh yes, of course. Yeah. Well, they thought I was God in certain sequences. No, they were very complimentary. Oh my God! When we went over to America, they looked after us over there until they ran out of money. That was a bit difficult.
And the check started to bounce, no doubt. And
not mine, but somebody else's. Yeah.
I did have an interesting question about the Bond films. So, do you watch the more modern Bonds? Are you interested?
I have to say, I haven't seen the last one because I don't really feel comfortable yet going into a cinema. I will watch it, of course I will. And I understand, I mean, I've seen so many clips of it and so many discussions about it. It's far too long. Although it's a road, they should have had an intermission in it.
It's the longest at 2 hours 43 minutes. Yeah, it is
that's what we call a 2p picture.
Yes. I mean, do you ever find when you've got to make, because you said the Bond had to be 2 hours 10 minutes maximum?
Well, that was to done because it was all on film. That's the maximum amount you could get into 10 reels, 10 doubles. You know, and the labs. And that would save millions of dollars in printing costs and shipping costs worldwide.
Yeah.
No. Nowadays it goes out on something, you know, something out the size of the camera. Yeah. The whole film. Or less than that.
There was never anything in a Bond film that you had to lose, you had to tighten up, and you thought, oh, even now I'd like to.
Well, if the picture was over length, of course we would then. I mean, Cubby, the great thing about him, if a scene wasn't absolutely terrific, can we do without it? And he would throw $1 million away. You know, and then you get those bits are all added in the DVDs as extra scenes and that. They should never have been shown.
Well, it had a question about that too. I mean, what do you feel about having deleted scenes, or does it ruin the magic of the editor's art in terms of it shows that the process you go in, or was it?
Oh no, because I think the scenes taken out, although I didn't like what they did on Life Force, because they slashed it. That wasn't done by me. But I mean, they just wanted to reduce it for length. I think TriStar wanted it shorter or something. And then that was done without too much. I was just slashing it. No, I think on the Bond films, it was very carefully speed stuff up, or because we had enough cover on it, you could take a chunk of dialogue out, say, and the scene you'd never know it had gone. And we had enough material. But that's where John, as an action director, was good. He wouldn't do one shot great thing and say, well, that's it, because you can't cut it. And he'd do cover all the way through it.
I mean, do you think it's good that we have the Blu-rays with the deleted scenes, or do you think it?
I think people find them interesting, yes, and it sells. It sells. I mean, MGM have resold the Bond films because I spent a year going through all the Bond films when I'd retired at Pinewood, the vaults before they destroyed it. Stuff, running all the stuff. I had an old-fashioned film equipment in there to run it. And had it all mastered, and you know, all the things, little tiny things, funny things that went wrong, that came up in our wanker film.
You go through all the Bonds.
All the Bonds that we still had the material in. I mean, I found stuff which what was it? What did I find? A particular one. They were so excited about it. But it was canned up wrong, but because I'd opened everything, and it was a deleted sequence with Sammy Davis Jr. in it.
Oh yes, for Diamonds Are Forever, yes.
Not one of my films, because I knew what was deleted scenes or sequences of films I did, even as an assistant. I knew where all that stuff was.
So because there's a few deleted scenes, and particularly the early Bond films, that they've never been released, essentially because they've never been found. So as far as you're concerned,
well, they're not there because they're certainly not in England. I've been through everything.
Yeah. So what we have is what we have, and that's it.
No, at certain times stuff was deleted. I mean, I think Tom Pevsner came in at one time and got rid of all the sound tapes, which was a shame because some of those sound tapes, you know, were running behind the scenes. I mean, a tape running when it kept going after the shot had finished, where you could hear Roger talking and things like that, which people love on blogs now, little bits of people that are dead talking about things, but they've all gone.
I'm pretty sure that when I spoke to Vernon, I believe I'm remembering correctly, I think Vernon said that he had some sound recordings from one of the Bond films that he worked on somewhere. So but that might not be anything particularly rare. But do you get to keep certain things like that, little mementos?
Well, all I've got a few. I worked on Soldier Blue, which was a very controversial picture. It was a love story, basically. I was assistant on that with Alec Beaton, who was American. It's a shot in Mexico, and it's about an Indian massacre. And it was so real. It was so well done. I mean, they used amputees and put false legs on and then chopped them off. And then they slashed women dressed up with sort of pregnant things, and babies came out. We got into such serious trouble. It was really horrendous. But it was all took place. He was doing that because of the Milo massacres that the Americans did, and it really touched a nerve. But the censor wouldn't allow it. There's certain stuff, so we had a lot of censor cuts on that. I got a few of those bits in 35mm somewhere, but whether I could ever find them. And I do have Julie Andrews on Tamarind Seed with Omar Sharif. Omar, because I knew Omar. Well, I don't say I knew him, but I mean, he was a friend because he was on Chicago and we ate and drank together when he was, you know, on the picture. And he was on Tamarind Seed, and remember, he's got a good memory. and he said, watch the rushes on the scene tomorrow. He said, we're going to do something special.
Yeah.
And Blake's a bit of a voyeur with Julie, and he put ice cubes on her nipples so that they were strong, put her under a sheet on the bed.
Yeah.
And when the love scene had finished, or whatever the scene was, Omar just whipped the sheets off. So I have that piece of film somewhere, but I don't know whether I could find it. Be worth a fortune, but it will never go. It's mine, no one else's.
Yeah, it's lovely how that little thing that only.
Yeah, I mean, who was it? It'd Be All Right on the Night. All those films of funnies. A number of people used to phone me up and saying you must have stuff. But we used to make a film called a wanker film. It was done to the song "I'm a Wanker," because whatever is politically incorrect, of course, now. But and most of the people in that film are dead. That's the sad thing. But all the things that went wrong, and we used to do it on each Bond film. We made a film about Ken Adam building the 007 stage, really cruel to him, done purely for Christmas. But they've never gone anywhere. I've never let them out.
But you have them. They're all safe.
I don't. I mastered them all, and Barbara's got them. They've got them in the archive. They pulled a bit of one of them out for when Q died. When was his?
99 he died.
When who?
Desmond Llewellyn died in 1999.
Yeah, well, when he died, they pulled out one of the outtakes where he which was very funny, with the bed, something to do with a bed scene, but it was hilarious. I can't remember exactly what it was. And that came from the Wanker film. Right. They were in the film.
Yeah, but
yes, it was lovely. They were so cruel to him, Roger was.
But it sounds like it was a mutual fondness.
Oh yeah, a love affair, yes.
Yeah. I did have one little question. I just, if you don't mind me asking, you've got a lovely 007 sign behind you. Is there a little?
On that one, that came off a car.
Ah. Oh, sorry.
All right, fell off. Sorry about that.
No, didn't mean to wreck your house. Oh, that's lovely. So is that something that a promotional item, was it, for on the film?
No, it was on the promotion on the Lotus.
Ah.
On the Lotus scene where they were selling them.
Yeah, it's lovely thing to have that.
This is my naughty office here. Oh. Where's the base for that? Oh, somewhere. That's the Labyrinth ball.
Oh, yeah. Oh yes. I think yeah. Vernon's got one of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
well, we've given those too.
Was that a crew gift? Was it?
Yes. No. Well, only for certain people. God, oh, it's set my printer off.
Is that a Moonraker badge?
Yeah.
Notice that one. Yeah, that's really nice. That.
And that's our guild mug, or was.
Oh.
That's the Guild of British Film and Television Editors, who I'm vice chairman of.
Yeah. And when was the guild founded, John? Was that?
The guild was founded. Oh, I have to look that up. I think it's on a pen, because when we hit 50 years.
Yeah.
It's 50 years. It's 1966.
Right. So it's a long.
And it's still going. It's called the British Film Editors now.
Yeah.
And we now take in assistants and assembly editors. We cover a lot more than when we did when we first started it.
I did have one audience question, just the penultimate question. Did you ever have to re-edit a film because of a test screening?
Only the Bond films that I was on, we never had test screenings.
Yeah.
Because Cubby said that's the film we've got and that's what they're going to have. Because test screenings can wreck films. Because I'm just trying to think. We had a screening in which we invite all some of the people. It's mostly comedies because they're the ones that's difficult, the laughter.
Yeah.
To make sure you haven't got too fast. So I think possibly we might have had a small screening or something which they took advantage of. But otherwise, I don't think, I'm trying to think of other pictures we had. Screenings with vast number, but they were mostly premieres, I think.
Yeah.
Well, on Zhivago, when we premiered Zhivago, and it got certain adverse comments about it as being too slow or too long. It was very long, but beautifully photographed. And so we did recut that. Well, I didn't because I was on the sound side with Win, but I mean, it was recut, so we had to readjust that. But it wasn't major changes. Not that I remember, because David was such a good director. Although not considered so, well, I suppose it's still considered good now. But their pictures, we could never make Zhivago now.
No.
You couldn't make Lawrence of Arabia now.
No.
You couldn't afford to.
No, that's right. You mentioned Omar Sharif. Was he as charismatic in real life as he was on screen?
He was very shy, very nervous.
Right.
He was, I mean, English wasn't his first language, which he had to learn. And his son was on Zhivago as well, Tariq. So it was a family thing. But he was much more confident on Zhivago than I believe he was on Lawrence.
Yeah.
I didn't work on Lawrence of Normandy. And of course, that was a film that everybody knew. I think later on he was a terrific card player.
Yes.
I think he made his money from playing cards. I wouldn't play cards with him. But he got a fantastic memory. He came into Pinewood once on some picture, which he said, "You're only doing it for money," because he needed money. And he saw me, and I was working on whatever it was at Pinewood, and we walked past each other at the door, and he turned and said, "Hello, John." That's fantastic. That makes you feel so good.
Yeah. Yes. It would. Yeah. Do you have a favorite actor that you've worked with, John, or that you've known because of a project?
Well, that I no, because they're all in different worlds to me, really. Favorite actor would still be Roger, I suppose. Yeah. Because I did so many with him.
I mean, Andrew McLachlan on Wild Geese. He was obviously a very good director.
Good director, good action director. Once again, ruthless director. He couldn't, if he'd physically tear pages out of a script to keep up to schedule, because I think he was probably paid to finish the picture on time with Ewan Lloyd and the company. Because I know when we did finish it, we all got a bonus because he'd made the date.
Oh wow! Yeah, I mean, do you find that most films do make don't go over because of the finances involved, or
they do what? Sorry.
You say that the Bond films, if they go over, it's like $1 million a day, but so they don't.
Oh, it's terrific pressure. Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
The money side, production side, and they're all, and then you can't have certain things because you want more crew on to try and things. You can't have it because they haven't got the money.
I mean, do you
Films today always have or normally always have a sort of private screening or a paid for screening where people come and fill in forms.
Yeah.
And then they work from that, and then they suddenly find some more money if it doesn't work.
Yes. I mean, do you ever find, John, because of the time constraints, do you find that you finish your work, or do you just have to present it? Do you, in terms, so therefore, do you always wish you had?
I always tried never to present something I wasn't happy with.
Yeah.
Because that's ridiculous, and just say, so you might work a few more hours to get it finished.
But it is ever a compromise, as this is as good as I can get it.
Right. Well, yes, you just say. I mean, I would show everything as we go along. I wasn't frightened of showing anything.
Yeah. So I suppose because you're working on it throughout, aren't you? So therefore you can.
Well, usually, I mean, I didn't come on when it had finished shooting. That's different today, you see. Sometimes they shoot the picture and don't have any editing on it until they've finished. They used to shoot pictures like that in France. You'd have somebody just put all the picture in order, but not edit it. But that is to me not a good idea, because if something doesn't work and you need a couple of inserts or you need a pickup shot, if you're putting it together as you go along, that's very helpful.
Yeah,
it's really difficult to see rushes and think, or are we missing something?
Oh yeah.
I mean, sometimes they don't have time to shoot it.
Yeah. I mean, do you have a favorite sequence, John, from the Bonds that you did, or like you thought, if this was a perfect sequence, this is it, or?
There's always one where the end of Octopussy, I think, where they've got all the car chase and the train chase and all the cuts that are involved there to the end of his death. That was a good sequence to put together. A terrific lot of film. I mean, logistically, with shooting it with car on the rails and then we had 2 units, 3 units on that, and the main unit with John shooting with the actors. And I was quite proud of that. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good little sequence, isn't it? With and Stephen Burkoff, of course, is a great.
I met Stephen Burkoff again when I was doing a picture in Lithuania.
Oh, right.
And he said, "You did something to me." He remembered, he said, is the editor. He didn't like something that, because he got this big hole in his head.
Yeah.
Once again, it's vanity.
Right.
He's a stage actor, really, Stephen Burkoff, extremely left wing. And doing it for money. We had to revoice him. Well, he couldn't speak Lithuanian. Right. The film was shot in Lithuania.
Yeah.
That was an interesting exercise.
Yeah.
But
so you
cut a picture in a language you don't understand.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you had interpreters and things.
Well, no. I mean, the director hardly spoke any English. We had a continuity girl who was my liaison.
Yeah.
It was a co-production between the British and it was what was it called? Divu Mishku, Forest of the Gods. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was such a challenge. But the thing is, even though you don't speak the language, you can follow it through and the rhythm of it and their eyes and their movements of what the story is. So you read the script and then see what it is. And it was all right as long as they shot to the script, but mostly as it was from a book, they did. But I used to, once I put a sequence together, the producer spoke good English. I would then run it for him. And only once did he say, well, you've used the same line twice, but a different reading. But I didn't know that.
And you said about Stephen Burkoff, I think, because he said he had a very distinctive. Just wanted you to use other shots and taking that.
Yeah, exactly.
The one film I didn't mention, John, The Executioner, which was Dirk Bogarde and Ava Gardner. Does that ring a bell at all?
The execute. Oh, that was called Kickback to me, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, there might have been an alternate title possibly.
Yeah. Well, that was shot in Vienna.
Hmm.
Oh, Ava Gardner was lovely.
Yeah.
She went through such agony to have her hair pulled back and to bring her skin tight. And when I went out with her twice, or Ernie Walter, she took a fancy to Ernie, the editor.
Right.
And we both smoked pipes. It's a lovely little story. We both smoked pipes. We were in a taxi going out to dinner because it was a very small unit. I'm trying to think of the director. Very small, Dirk Bogarde.
Oh, it's Cyril Frankel?
Cyril Frankel, that's right. We got all the information there. I can't remember these things, but now you're reminded of it. I can remember the sort of fun times there. I mean, we were in this car and the wind blew in, and Ernie was smoking his pipe, and a dottle came out of it, went straight down her front, and he went, oops, and he put his hand down, and she said, bit lower, bit lower. She was lovely. Yeah. Dirk Bogarde was a very sincere actor, but he was a good actor. I have a letter from him. He wrote me a letter because for something I don't know why, or he said something and I sent him a photograph probably, or something. And he wrote me a letter back, which is typed on his typewriter. I've got it somewhere. I liked him actually.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to have. That sounds.
Yeah.
Is there any other keepsakes, John, that you haven't already mentioned that you have that you're very fond of?
I have a beautiful watch given to me by John Williams after Goodbye, Mr. Chips. No little treasure things like that. Signed things, a few, but we have no selfies because we didn't have those things. I wish we had. Well, my children have T-shirts signed by David Bowie.
Oh, wow.
From Live Aid in 60, whenever it was, or 70, or whenever it was. I don't know whether they've still got them.
Oh,
I hope they have.
Yes.
Maybe they're collector's things.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I want to say thank you, John, for sharing so many memories with us this evening. Unless there's anything else you want to add, I'll.
No, I don't know who your followers are. They're not film students. They're people that are interested in films. So I can't say if you want to join the film industry or anything like that, like I did to students. Because I the young people are going to take over for us old farts. Of course they will, because that's how things happen. But I've had a fantastic life. I've loved it. But I've had a very good wife too. I have to say that. We've been married for 57 years.
Oh, congratulations.
57 years, yeah. And but she has come around the world with me because the pictures that I worked on were sufficiently big that you could have your wives with you, which was a very different way of working. It doesn't work like that now, no. Unfortunately, except on very big pictures.
Yeah, and I suppose to sustain a relationship for that long is difficult anyway. But when you're traveling around the world and the film business is a very sort of almost nomadic existence sometimes.
Yeah. So I mean, my wife came and went on Chicago and Nicholas Alexander, and we even sent my son to school in Madrid while we were there because we were there for so long. Nowadays, pictures take 4 weeks to shoot. Well, these were 6 months pictures, so you couldn't go away from home. Although I did, I went on Wild Geese. We were away for 3 months. Didn't talk to Jenny because we were living out in Chappies, in Rondavels.
Yeah,
there was no communication. Well, the only communication, we used to send letters back with the rushes, which the driver used to drive from Chappies to Johannesburg, and then talk to a British Airways pilot who used to take the rushes in his cabin. That was a contact that you and Lloyd had with British Airways.
Yeah. Though we said, John, that my audience primarily is not film students, but there could be a couple of people watching this on YouTube that want to go into editing. Do you have any words of wisdom for a budding editor?
just give it your best every time. Don't just, you've got to have a certain love for it. I mean, the film industry is so big now. I mean, there's jobs everywhere. There's no shortage of employment. I don't want to work now, but if there's anybody out there that's a good assistant and has forgotten the industry, go back in, because there's a lot of money in it now. I didn't do it for, I don't do it for money, or at least you do initially, but you've got to, if you're on a picture, you've got to remember the picture's got to make money. Otherwise, it's not going to make any more. You can't make a picture just, well, you can, people do, but, and try not do what I did once, which is on the Brothers, which is work for points, because you'll never get anything. That was a mad thing. It's only because I liked the director, or at least I thought I did.
Right.
Dunkerton. His brother put the money up from the t-shirt company, and we made this picture. I mean, it could have been better, but he got carried away with religion, and oh God, religion is very difficult sometimes. Yeah. Or he got carried away with his own importance. Right. Yeah. And ends up in the picture with his willy on the shot, jumping up in the air in the nude. He wanted that, so he's got it. He's there for posterity, but nobody ever saw the film. Yeah. I suppose it is show business being the bigger of those two words, and business is what it is. A business. It's a business. Yeah, yeah. And I've been fortunate in my life to enjoy part of it. I mean, you sound like you haven't really encountered many egos or anything to apart. Oh no, you always have the aggravations as you go along. Things that are, not quite right, or you get upset or stress. Stress is also. Time is always the essence. Anyway, I'm going to toast you and your friends. Oh, yes. And I have a glass of wine here, and I've been very good. I haven't had any. Can I hold it? Cheers. Yeah. Very nice to see you. And look after. I look forward to seeing it. Yeah, I'll send it to you. And yeah, thanks, John, for sharing your wonderful memories. It's been a delightful evening. Okay, good. Well, good luck, and thank you. You too. Bye, everybody. All the best. Bye. Thank you. How do I get off? That's it. Goodbye. Bye.